Thanos' goal is so, in a way, stupid. It's like he just arbitrarily wants to wipe out half of everything.
It's logically unbelievably dumb, but
the whole point is they motivate his really, really stupid plan with his character, and that's why people understand him. And that actually leads me into the next little topic here, because this is going to be fun. I'm going to advocate that Sylvanas should have been more of a focus of the last 2 expansions, that we should have had more screen time with Sylvanas, and that she should have been a way more important character. That's what I'm going to advocate for. And as much as, maybe, people might be like, wow, I can't believe you've just said this, given everything else that you've said about that cinematic. Well, no, here's the thing. That cinematic... See, if you've read World of Warcraft Sylvanas, and then you close the book right before the cinematic happens, I am sure that will be an absolute banging cinematic, that all of the beats will land, that it will be really engaging, and you'll be like, oh wow, we've seen her really, and we have seen like hints and the foreshadowing and stuff, but we've actually in the book we actually experience her going through all of this and thinking, oh my god, Tenathrius, like he totally, but he's also right. This is a flawed design, and so then we'd fully understand Sylvanas, so that when she finally is like, you know what, it's bubbled, the pot has bubbled over, Arrow, then it would be great. Now the problem is that book hasn't came out yet, and what that book is going to do to make this cinematic really just click and fit should have been done in game. So basically, I think that number 1, Battle for Azeroth. Actually, this is really what I think. Battle for Azeroth should have had no old gods. Yep. I think Battle for Azeroth should have been an expansion fully Alliance versus Horde, with Sylvanas being really like more present than she was. Even so Alliance people are being thwarted by her. I then think that after that, it should have been Void time for an expansion, dealing with that stuff. Then I think Shadowlands is the thing to do after that. And I think for me the big difference with Shadowlands is Sylvanas should have been taking to the field. She should have been active in all 4 zones. And, while we are going through helping these covenants, that is the B story. That's the B plot to the A plot of Sylvanas and the big looming threat and the sigils. So this is basically the thing. Sylvanas, the sigils, all that stuff, that should have been a core part of 9.0 storytelling, with us spending way more time with Sylvanas. And, in between the gaps, in between the lines, of us experiencing her actions, we get to learn little bits of her motivations, how she's thinking, how she's feeling. Even do, like, some games will do this, right? You have a little segment where you are, crawling through the air vent, you overhear a character and you sort of learn something because you've overheard them. I mean, that's something that we could have done at so many points, and then maybe we could have understood more. And I think if they had have done all of that, such that the novel isn't required to have this fully land experientially, and I think it's very important to say a story has to land experientially. It can't just land logically, because it landing logically, that's like the construction of a plot, but it landing experientially, that is the storytelling of a plot. Like our storytelling of a story, and plot is a part of a story. Whereas the issue that they had here is that's the bit they didn't get, because they put the stuff in a book again.
Wonder why they did that.
You see, here's I genuinely don't think it's because they want to sell books.
Of course not. That would
definitely
be
not
awful. I don't think that. I mean,
it's books. It doesn't make it that. Why would you sell somebody a paperback book for like $6 or $7.99 on Amazon, with Amazon's cut the cost of making the book? Why on earth would you do that when you're making MMO money with the MMO business model? I think it's because they love these characters. They love all that stuff. And they know they need to get the characters' motivations out, and it's the books where they can do that, and they can tell those stories that flesh out the world and the characters. But I think the problem is that as they have told the story of, the in-game World of Warcraft stuff, they've maybe forgotten that not every single player has read all the books and fully gets everything. And there's a few examples of this. So many people, I think it was Gears of War 3, that had one of the authors of the just sort of expanded universe material come on as like very important in the story. So the Gears of War 3 story, I think it was 3, really you needed a lot more extended universe knowledge than just what you would have had from playing Gears 1 and 2 to get its plot. Another good example, I think, is Halo 4. And in a way, Halo 5 too, where Halo 4 and 5, you definitely would have got things a lot better, a lot more, if you knew the expanded universe material, if you'd read those books. And it's that sort of thing. You don't need to play Halo Reach for Halo 1 to work. But if Halo 1 was constructed in such a way that you did need to play Halo Reach, or you did need to read the book that Halo Reach was based on, then Halo 1 would have had issues. And that is basically the core of this. They do have actually great characters, they have great stories, they have all of this stuff that's great. Their issue is the telling. And I think what they need to do is they need to reevaluate the scope and ambition of the stories they want to tell. And they need to conform that to their capacity to tell the story inside the game. That's basically my treatise on what needs to happen for the WoW narratives to actually land with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I extremely feel that way, where I feel like the answer I had in my head when, I said, why are they doing that? It's kind of obvious, was that they literally they have more story to tell than the quest designers can actually put into the game, the content people can put into the game, and it's just a matter of, well, we've got all this other story, so we'll throw it in a book. But that's actually okay if the other story is other story. Like, I think the book strategy was actually fairly good a little bit back in the day.
Yeah.
Where I remember reading the War of the Ancients being, whoa, this is really, really cool. But I didn't need to know any of that to play through the game and understand what was going on. Until a certain point, which is like at Kata, I imagine the War of the Ancients would have confused people. Like the literal dungeon where the Ancients would have confused people if they didn't know what was going on. I can't remember how well it was explained at the time to players. I said it just, there's some stuff in the past. And the Caverns of Time was a good way to go, oh, here's stuff that you've experienced in books or heard about. Here's how they go out, how they like actually happen in real time. And you get to experience them. And as one of the book readers, I thought the Caverns of Time stuff was really cool. But that was all just like an aside. I didn't need to read Arthas to actually, Arthas Rise of the Lich King. I didn't need to read that to understand or feel something when I did Icecrown Citadel. Or when I did Wrath of the Lich King. Because that was all side stuff, additional stuff. It wasn't like core motivations were explained in that book or anything. It was all just flavor. Where it's a case of, it's now instead of your like side dish coming in the book, half your main course is locked in the book. And you're like, why?
Yeah.
But it's just because they don't have enough chefs or something. I don't know. Whatever. The analogy kind of falls apart, but you know what I mean.
I think a bunch of that is just how they tell the story in game, and it's the sort of thing where with the amount of story that is told within Shadowlands, I think you could have taken some of that away from each of the covenants, and I think you could have given it, well, I mean, they even referred to those characters as the Maw Covenant. You could have taken narrative screen time away from the covenants the players join and given a little bit more to the Maw Covenant so that we could have better understood those characters. And it's the sort of thing where, in a way I'm sad for them as well, because they've got all this stuff figured out. They've got it all figured out in their heads. They know where this plot's going, and it must suck for them right now because all that's happening right now, like I know, is pivotal for the future plot thrust of World of Warcraft. I mean, they gleefully talked about this being our first step into the cosmos. And the player reaction has really not been great.
We broke our ankle with the first step, basically.
Yeah. So they must be feeling pretty awful about this. And so. I think the only thing I've got to say to them is it's about the in-game storytelling and what players will feel, based solely on in-game, and that's where it's tricky. I think in terms of their narrative design, they need to do a better job of investing player characters to NPC characters who are pivotal. Like, it's fine that we know Pelagos and Clea. I mean, at least you get to know Pelagos and Clea. I barely know
vaguely
my soulbinds as a Night Fae, but instead of that, And look, I get it, Pelagos and Clea, whatever, good, whatever. But if the pivotal characters for your storyline are the ones that feel underdeveloped, like, versus the side characters, then that's going to be really tricky for making those plot lines land with players. And I mean, look, you can say fairly objectively that at the most charitable, this has been controversial. Yep. And I think one thing you need to do is accept reality and deal with that. This, even though it might all make sense in their heads and might all be really good, it does not work. It does not make sense to players. So it was not effective at doing its job. So a direction change is needed. And that loops me back into the sort of start of this little mini segment. Sylvanas is going to drive this much of the plot. We need to spend way more time with Sylvanas. And I don't care if it risks her coming off like a bit of a Saturday morning cartoon villain where, people's criticisms of Arthas and Wrath, it's like, sure, the price that you paid for how you dealt with Arthas was people giving you that criticism. But is what you gained from doing him like that worth that price? I think yes. With Sylvanas, that's it. I would, if people were saying, oh, Sylvanas, mustache twirling cartoon villain, but she's ours. She's one of ours, right? Because people were more invested with her and really able to get her a bit. But that's not happened. So, basically, World of Warcraft needs way more Sylvanas. Didn't think I'd be saying that, but I hope people understand why I say that. If they're going to tell a storyline that is to which Sylvanas is pivotal, we need way more Sylvanas time. And even though she is an enemy, we just need to come up with creative ways for us to get screen time with our villain.
Yeah, I mean, that's that's one of the prevailing incredible things about how people enjoyed Shadowbringers, was because villains are done immaculately. And are the reasons you see so much of them a bit contrived? Yeah. Does it make sense in the end? Does it result in a satisfying conclusion? Yes. And that's a thing where they need to learn that. I mean, even Garrosh was, outside of the Warlords, Garrosh was a relatively enjoyed villain as far as I remember, because he went off the rails, we went and stopped him. Yeah. Is it maybe a little bit emotionally dull to just go, oh, he got corrupted by power again, so we'll kill him? But he wasn't really corrupted. He was kind of he sought it out, and it empowered him. Didn't necessarily corrupt him per se.
Yes, it didn't corrupt him by changing his character or something. It amplified. He had the means to do what he wanted to do, so it furthered him along the path he wanted to go on. So it was like a catalyst rather than a corrupting thing. And I think with Garrosh as well, it's that sort of thing where people met him in the Burning Crusade, and they got more of him in Wrath. They got way more of him in Kata, and in Kata it was in a way where they saw both the good of Garrosh and the bad of Garrosh. So they started to build him up more and more as a multifaceted character that the players really experienced in the game world, because there was all those instances where Garrosh was boots on the ground with you, instead of the way that they've not really written Sylvanas like a video game character, really. They've kind of written her as if she's in a different media. Like
Daenerys, I guess. That's what I saw in comparison to, but like a TV show thing. It feels more that way. It feels more novelization, TV series. It feels more like that than like a game, because she doesn't really exist in World of Warcraft outside of a couple of times.
Yeah, and there's another side there which I should bring up because you mentioned Game of Thrones. Jon is subtly but interestingly different in the show versus the books. Because in the show, he comes off so much more like mopey and stuff. But that's because in the show, it's not POV narrative. In the books, when you get Jon, it's a Jon chapter. So you get his internal monologue. And comparing show Jon to book Jon, you can really pick up on that. Yeah. I mean, I know this is really getting into the kind of nerdy weeds of the construction of narratives and stuff, but yeah, I think that's something to think about.